She pushed me. My daughter-in-law, Scarlett. She pushed me off my family's yacht for $3 billion. She didn't even flinch. I saw her smile, that look of smug satisfaction, as I fell into the cold ocean water. She thought I was a burden. She thought I was an obstacle between her and the inheritance my husband and I had built with decades of sacrifice. And my son, David, he just stood there. He looked away. He let it happen. What hurts, what truly tears at your soul? It isn't the fear of drowning. It isn't the salt water filling your mouth. What hurts is the disloyalty. It is the betrayal of the one you raised. It is the sharp pain of being pushed aside for the woman who took your son from you. I looked up and saw the cold calculus in her eyes. I was just a number on a spreadsheet, a liability to be discarded. They thought I was weak. They treated me as incapable for months in my own home, talking to me as if I were a child. But what Scarlett didn't know, what she could never imagine while she popped the champagne to celebrate my death, was my secret. The hidden power I had kept in the basement for 20 years. She had no idea who would be waiting for her when she got back home, thinking she was the new owner of everything. If you have ever felt invisible, if you have ever felt that your voice no longer matters to those you gave your life for, subscribe to this channel now. Because this story is not about how I fell. It is about the turnaround. It is about how I rose up. The loneliness after widowhood is a real thing. After my husband Richard passed away, the mansion in Miami, which was once full of laughter and planning, became too quiet. But the silence wasn't the worst part. The worst was the invasion. The silent invasion of Scarlett, my daughter-in-law. The ritual of lost autonomy began every day at 8 in the morning. Coffee. I used to drink my coffee on the lanai, looking at the ocean, planning my day. I was still on the board of Vance Maritime, the company Richard and I founded, but Scarlett changed the ritual. She bought a noisy industrial espresso machine that I hated, and the kitchen became her office. "Good morning, dear," she would say, without looking up from her laptop, while David, my son, would just nod, his eyes glued to his cell phone. "What are you going to want today? A smoothie? You need to keep up your strength, Helena." She spoke to me as if I were a child with that fake, condescending patience. Subtle exclusion was her weapon. She didn't yell, she smiled. That is how she became my curator. It started as innocent help, the caring that isolates. "Helena, you're grieving. Let me take care of the bills this month." "Helena," the company lawyer called, "I handled it. Don't worry." Within 6 months, I no longer had access to my own finances. She intercepted my calls. She answered my emails. She rearranged the living room, putting away Richard's photos, saying it was to help me move on. But she wasn't helping me move on. She was erasing me. She was undermining my ability to decide about my house, my money, and my life. I tried to fight. My God, how I tried. I tried to reassert my competence. At a family meeting, I said, "David, Scarlett, I understand the logistics of freight. I was in the room when Richard closed our first international contract." Scarlett just smiled, that polished, empty smile, and placed her hand over mine. "Of course you were, darling, but technology has changed so much. It's all so complicated now. Leave it to us." She dismissed me with an act of affection. David said nothing. He allowed it. He watched his mother, the woman who raised him, be treated like a senile relic, and he accepted it. His disloyalty was the silent poison. They were taking away my control, my dignity. I was no longer Helena Vance. I was a burden they had to manage. The caring that isolates was only the first phase. The second phase was the cold calculus. It happened on a Sunday, 2 weeks after Richard's funeral. Scarlett insisted on a family dinner at my house. As soon as the dishes were served, Scarlett opened her laptop over the linen tablecloth that my grandmother embroidered. David, my son, cleared his throat. "Mom," he started, "Scarlett and I have been analyzing the assets. We need to be practical." My husband had barely cooled in his grave, and there was the agony of watching the inheritance and the home turn into a matter of dispute. What I built with effort, every sacrifice, Now it was just money. Scarlett took the floor. Helena, darling, we are talking about a net worth of nearly $3 billion, but it's all tied up. The company, the fleet, this house. She turned the laptop towards me. There was a spreadsheet. The use of spreadsheets in legal terms at Sunday dinner. My house was listed as real estate asset, Miami, sale potential. They spoke of partition, probate, and asset liquidity. Every legal term was a stab at my memory, turning my love into a transaction. The point, Helena, Scarlett said, is that this house is overvalued and consumes absurd maintenance. It's a dead weight. If we liquidate the house and the oldest shipping fleet, we can reinvest and... I dropped my silverware. Liquidate? My voice came out icy. Are you talking about selling my house? The house where I raised you, David? They made the psychological error of presumption. They looked at me and presumed I was emotionally frail. They thought I was uninformed. David looked at me. Mom, it's for your future, for your security. It's too much for you to manage alone. There it was, the caring that isolates again. They declared me incapable of managing my own life. I looked at the two of them, so eager, so hungry for my legacy, and I felt my inner strength awaken. They saw numbers, but I saw sacrifices. They saw a burden, but I saw a home. And they didn't know what Richard and I had hidden years ago, precisely to protect ourselves from this kind of greed. They were planning the sale of my legacy. But they didn't know that I already had the hidden power to stop them. They thought I was weak. They treated me like an emotional fool. But they knew nothing about my fear of not leaving a legacy. They saw my silence and mistook it for weakness. Richard was the face of Vance Maritime, but I was the backbone. And I always knew that greed could destroy families. Years ago, Richard and I drafted a document. It was not our primary will, it was an addendum, an emotional insurance policy. It was the ancient letter. We stored it in the basement. The basement of our house in Miami, a humid place that Scarlett refused to enter. We vacuum sealed it and placed it inside an old mahogany toolbox, hidden behind shelves of dusty wine. It was our hidden power. They were so busy assessing the market value of the house that they never thought to look at what was beneath it. This document contained a trust clause. It was an unexpected legal detail that I suggested myself. The clause was simple. In the event of the death of one of the founders, the entirety of the estate, including the company and all real estate properties, would enter a protection period of 5 years. During that period, nothing could be liquidated. Management would pass to our son, David, but the final control remained with me as the sole administrator of the trust. The key to the turnaround was that this document did not nullify the main will, but froze it. It was a legally valid addendum. They were using the old will, but our ancient letter, the secret in the basement, was our unexpected solution. They couldn't sell my house. They couldn't liquidate my company. They couldn't touch the $3 billion for 5 years. And most importantly, they couldn't remove me from my position as administrator. While they made spreadsheets at my Sunday dinner, I smiled internally. Their presumption was my shield. They thought they had all the power. I said nothing. I let them underestimate me. I knew that when the time came, my hidden power would not come from a scream, but from a dusty piece of paper that protected my home and my legacy. Little did they know that my dignity was shielded by ink and the wisdom of experience. A week after that dreadful spreadsheet dinner, Scarlett came to me. "We want to make it up to you," she said, her voice dripping with honey. "The Vance legacy, our best yacht, is fueled up. Let's take a day trip, just the 3 of us, to reconnect." My loneliness after widowhood was so deep that I wanted to believe her. On the morning of the trip, the subtle exclusion turned into clear humiliation. Scarlett knocked on my bedroom door. "I brought you a gift to wear." It was a heavy, ivory-colored silk dress. It was a cocktail gown for a casual yacht outing in Miami. "Scarlett, this is formal," I said. "It's elegant, Helena," she countered. It was the inappropriate attire. It was a costume. She wanted me to look like a relic, to feel out of place, the confused old widow. It was a perfectly calculated microaggression to reinforce the feeling that I didn't belong anywhere. When we went down to the dock, the trap became clear. David and Scarlett looked like the owners of the world. I looked like the grandmother they were taking to the nursing home. That yacht was the symbol of my loneliness. They guided me to a teak chair, far from the center of the action. "Stay here, dear. Don't exert yourself." They were applying the reverse Pygmalion effect. They treated me as the disposable weight they wanted me to be. They expected me to be fragile. They spent the following hours ignoring me, drinking expensive champagne and talking about me. "The sea air will do her good," Scarlett said to David, loud enough for me to hear. "She needs to rest her mind." My mind was perfectly clear. I saw the cold calculus behind every kind gesture. The pain of being passed over was a knot in my throat. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted to finalize the transaction. The yacht was not a gift. It was a floating coffin. And as the sun began to set, Scarlett walked up to me and offered me a glass. "A final toast, Helena, to new beginnings." And I realized, too late, that the new beginning was hers. "To new beginnings," Scarlett said. And then she pushed me. It wasn't a struggle, it was an act of cold calculus, fast and efficient. The formal, heavy dress she forced me to wear was instantly soaked, pulling me down like an anchor. The Vance Legacy began to pull away, the engine noise growing louder as David sped up. He did not look back. The betrayal was complete. I thrashed my arms, fighting against the weight of the dress. What hurts is not the cold of the water. What hurts is the disloyalty of the one you raised. The money doesn't hurt. The betrayal does. I stopped fighting the dress and started fighting to live. I was not going to die there. I was not going to leave my legacy in the hands of those monsters. And then, a sound. Not the yacht's engine, but a smaller, closer engine. A bright light cut through the darkness. An inflatable dinghy. Mrs. Vance, grab my hand!" The voice was strong. I turned, exhausted, and saw a face I recognized. Miguel Torres. Miguel was one of the youngest crew members on the yacht. I personally promoted him to boatswain after seeing him publicly humiliated by Scarlett. She treated him like trash. I treated him with respect, the kind of dignity my own family denied me. Now, this unexpected support was pulling me out of the water, saving my life. "Miguel, how?" I gasped. "I saw it, Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice low and furious. "I saw everything." He had been fired by Scarlett that morning, before the trip. He was collecting his things at the dock when he saw us leave. He felt something was wrong. Miguel, an experienced sailor, had taken the maintenance dinghy and followed the Vance Legacy from a distance. He saw Scarlett push me. He saw David speed away. "They didn't even look back," he whispered, his silent testimony sealing their fate. "They tried to kill you." The Pygmalion effect was right there. I treated Miguel with dignity, and I created a savior. The living proof of humanity was there, in the dinghy. "They won't get away with this, Mrs. Vance," he said. "What are we going to do?" "We're going home, Miguel," I said, my inner strength returning, ice cold and hard. "They think I'm dead weight at the bottom of the ocean. They're going to return to my house, celebrating the inheritance. But we have a surprise for them. We have the truth." Miguel did not take me home. It would be the first place they would go. He took me to his small apartment in Fort Lauderdale. I spent the night wide awake. The grief rehearsal began the next morning. Miguel made a call. "They docked," Miguel said, his face grim. "The Vance Legacy is back. They called the Coast Guard. They reported a woman overboard. Accident. Accident." The word was so clean, so clinical. Miguel turned on his phone's speakerphone. A recording. David's voice was shaky, weak. "Scarlett, did we really do this? She was my mother." And then, Scarlett's voice, sharp as glass. "David, stop it. It was a tragic accident. Now focus on what matters. The 5-year trust. It's all dissolved. The legacy is ours. The $3 billion is ours." There was a pause. I held my breath, listening to the dialogue of betrayal. "The house is the first to go." Scarlett cut him off, her exposed greed in every syllable. I've already called the luxury realtor. They're going there this afternoon to prepare the property. I told them to pack everything. All those old family photos, the heavy furniture, everything. The devaluation of the home, my house, my memories. Buyers want to see potential, David, not a mausoleum. And honestly, her voice lowered. Finally, the weight is gone. We are free. The weight. Me. I was the weight. The shock, the cold, the pain. It all disappeared. In its place, a chilling clarity remained. The pain of not being respected was my fuel now. They weren't grieving. They were celebrating. They were erasing me. I turned off the recording. I looked at Miguel, my silent witness. They are selling my house, I said, not as a question, but as a declaration of war. Mrs. Vance, what do we do? The police? No, I said, standing up. The cotton t-shirt felt like armor. The police are too slow. They will contest it. We have something better. We have the secret in the basement. They think they are selling an asset, but they forgot who holds the deed. My inner strength was back. They wanted my money. They were going to receive my fury. The recording of Scarlett's exposed greed was the fuel that dried my tears. My home was being violated. The pain of not being respected transformed into a cold, clear fury. Miguel, I said, I need you to call Arthur Sterling. Arthur was my personal attorney, Richard's confidant, the only man alive, besides me, who knew about the secret in the basement. I told him everything. The caring that isolates, the spreadsheets, the push, the cold calculus, and my son speeding the boat away. And finally, the unexpected rescue by Miguel. They are moving fast, Arthur, I continued. They are emptying my house. They are using the old will to liquidate the $3 billion. They cannot, Arthur said. They are committing fraud. The ancient letter, the 5-year protection addendum. They think the addendum died with me, I said. They think I am the sole administrator. They needed me to die. Then, Arthur said, this is where the strategic turnaround begins. Your silent empowerment. Helena, you need to remain dead. Let Scarlett and David set the emergency succession hearing. Let them present the false will. Let them lie under oath. And us? I asked. We will prepare our own hearing. Miguel is your eyewitness. The recording he has is proof of intent. But the ancient letter? That is the final blow. We will apply the theory of parental investment. Your lifetime of sacrifice was betrayed. The law protects against fraud, but we will argue that they broke the social and fiduciary contract they had with you, justifying the total reversal of any asset they tried to steal. The plan was set. Sometimes it's not the scream, but the signature on a document that changes destinies. I would stay hidden. Miguel, my ally, had one mission. They are emptying the house, I told him, but they won't go into the basement. The letter is there, in a mahogany toolbox. Miguel nodded. He was going to retrieve my hidden power. While Scarlett chose new furniture, I was in a secure apartment, signing the documents Arthur prepared. She was celebrating her inheritance. I was planning my recapture. The emergency succession hearing was scheduled for the main conference room of Vance Maritime, the heart of our legacy. As Arthur Sterling prepared our entrance, I felt my inner strength growing. I was about to confront the betrayal that almost killed me, and I was armed with the truth. Arthur showed me the final documents. The ancient letter, recovered by Miguel from the secret in the basement, was on the table. The trust addendum that Richard and I drafted was clear. As long as I was alive, no one could liquidate Vance Maritime or the house. This was the final deepening, the irrefutable legal proof of my autonomy. Helena, Arthur said, the strategy is clear. Your appearance in the room, the truth revealed live, is the shock. Miguel's testimony is the evidence of intent to murder. The ancient letter is the proof of fraud. Their calculus failed. They tried to use the old will, but your wisdom of experience foresaw their greed. I thought of my ice glare. I didn't need to scream. I needed to be the truth. Arthur also prepared my final hidden power. He obtained a notarized audit of all company accounts over the last 6 months. What he found was the proof of David and Scarlett's mismanagement. Transfers of funds from Vance Maritime to offshore shell accounts, controlled by Scarlett. They were not just planning my death, they were stealing from the company. The cold calculus was absolute. They were already draining the company. The blackmail Scarlett might attempt using Richard's corporate secrets, Arthur said, will fall flat. Why? Because her fraud is current. Her crime is present. Your legacy is intact, but her betrayal is fresh. Do not be distracted by Richard's secrets. Keep the focus on her greed. I rehearsed my silent scream, my response to Scarlett. I wasn't going to accuse her. I was going to make her accuse herself. I am the founder, and without my sacrifices, none of this would be possible. Arthur also had a plan for Miguel. To ensure the unexpected support was not seen as revenge from a fired employee, Arthur provided a long-term employment contract with a significant salary, retroactive. Miguel was not a traitor. He was a rewarded, loyal employee. My new legacy was starting to be built through the dignity and respect that I denied my own son. I was paying loyalty with justice. I was ready for the hearing. I was no longer the discarded widow in mourning. I was Helena Vance, the matriarch who had returned from the sea to reclaim her throne. The entrance to the conference room was scheduled for 2:00 p.m. At 1:00 p.m., as I dressed in my navy blue power suit, the phone rang. It was Arthur. "Helena, we have one last reinforcement. It's Sophia." His voice was low. "She's at my office. She saw the news about the rescue. She saw the emails her mother couldn't erase. She wants to help." Sophia, my granddaughter, their daughter, she was the missing reinforcement. She wasn't an eyewitness to the yacht, but she was the emotional connection David needed to finally break. She was the living proof that the legacy couldn't be bought. I went to Arthur's office. Sophia was sitting there, pale, her eyes red. She couldn't look at me. "Grandma, I'm so sorry. I knew Mom was mean. She talked about you like you were furniture. She said the house was hers." Her words were the pain of not being respected, I felt, amplified. I hugged her, welcoming validation. "You are not guilty, Sophia. You are the only innocent one in all of this, and it is for you that I am fighting." "I want to help you win, Grandma," she whispered. "I know one thing. Mom always talked to their lawyer on the phone, even during dinner. She talked about the ancient letter. She said it was a bad joke, but that she was sure she and David had the original in the safe. She always laughed and said yours was safe." This was new information, the turnaround. Scarlett knew the letter existed, but she was confident she had a forged copy to present after my death. She was planning a double fraud. First, my death to annul the trust. Second, a fake copy of the letter to freeze the assets and buy them time. The cold calculus was deeper than we imagined. I looked at Arthur. "The forged copy." "This is her confession, Helena," Arthur said. "She will try to present it." The final counterattack plan was adjusted. Sophia was not going to enter the conference room. The pain would be too great. But her presence in the building, the fact that David would know his daughter was witnessing his moral judgment, would be the catharsis he needed to break. "Arthur, we will go in. Miguel and I said. "But David has to see Sophia before the hearing begins. Tell him his daughter is on her way. Tell him he has to choose between his betrayal and his daughter's dignity." A mother's heart was making its last gamble. I could have limited myself to crushing them legally. But I needed to give David one last chance to honor his father's memory. His dignity would not be bought. It would have to be won through the sacrifice of his betrayal. The female authority was ready for the confrontation. The conference room was in collapse. Helena's ice glare, the truth revealed live by Miguel, and the evidence of the ancient letter had destroyed their plan. Scarlett was hyperventilating. David was crying, the pain of disloyalty finally tearing at his soul. The power hierarchy was inverted, but the battle was not yet over. Scarlett rose. The morning makeup streamed down her face, but the calculation was still there. "You won't get away with this, you selfish old woman," she shrieked, her voice high-pitched. "You are alive, but you are not the only one with hidden power. I have inside information about Vance Maritime. I have access to all of Richard's emails from the last 5 years. Do you think you're the only one with secrets kept?" Arthur. The text refers to Arthur, the lawyer. But in the Portuguese text, the name Leonard is used for the lawyer's intervention, which will be corrected to Arthur Sterling for consistency with the established persona. Intervened, his tone hard. "What are you saying, Ms. Davies? You are in violation of the confidentiality clause of your prenuptial agreement, which prohibits the use of company information." "It's relevant!" she screamed, pointing at me. "If you drag me to the police for an accident at sea, I'll leak everything. I'll expose the truth about the tax restructuring Richard did 10 years ago. I'll make sure the legacy isn't even worth $300 million. I'll make sure the Vance name is stained forever. No one will have the empire. If I fall, we all fall together." She used the only weapon she had left, the threat of mutual destruction. She was blackmailing not my life, but Richard's memory and legacy. I remained seated. I looked at David, who was in shock. He had heard his mother being threatened with his father's betrayal. David, the pivot, was under the final blow. I slowly stood up. I walked towards Scarlett, my ice glare fixed on hers. "You threatened me with death, Scarlett. You treated me as a burden, and now you are threatening the legacy Richard and I built with sacrifice." I looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor, I am not willing to subject my company, the future of my employees, and the memory of my husband to the blackmail of this criminal." I turned to David, ignoring Scarlett for a moment. "David, the betrayal you committed on the yacht was for money. You sped up the boat, you are guilty, but right now, you have a chance to honor your father, the only thing left of his legacy. Choose now. Do you support her blackmail and destroy the future of Vance Maritime for everyone? Or do you take responsibility for your guilt and help us stop her?" David let out a sob, his emotional connection to his mother, his loyalty, returning in a wave of guilt. He looked at his wife, who was terrified. He saw his own reflection in her greed. I won't let her do that," David whispered, his voice broken. He stood up, moving away from Scarlett. He turned to Arthur. "Arthur, I give my full testimony, everything, all the frauds she planned, all the lies she made me tell. I will cooperate with the prosecution. I will not destroy my father's legacy because of her." The turnaround was final. The matriarch's female authority defeated the threat of mutual destruction. Scarlett lost her last shield. David, the pivot, finally chose dignity and respect for the family. Arthur Sterling picked up the phone. "Your Honor, with the cooperation of David Vance and Scarlett Davies' confession on tape, we can proceed with criminal charges for attempted murder and high-level fraud. The blackmail has failed." Scarlett ran to David, grabbing him. "You traitor! You lost everything because of that old woman!" David merely pushed her away. The security guards escorted her toward the door. The silent empowerment was mine. I simply nodded to the guards. Scarlett was taken, screaming, out of the building, straight into custody. Her shriek of fury was the last thing we heard, an ugly sound that marked the end of her influence. David remained in the conference room, his body trembling, but his eyes finally clear, without the fog of betrayal and greed. For the first time in 10 years, I saw my son, not Scarlett's pawn. Arthur Sterling and I sat with David for over 2 hours, documenting every lie, every fraudulent transfer, and every microaggression Scarlett had committed. David was stripped of illusions. He wasn't trying to save the money. He was trying to save his father's memory and his own soul. He was the redemption I never asked for, but received. The counterattack plan went into full effect. It was no longer about the poetic justice of option A that Scarlett rejected. It was about the plausible legal justice of option B that David accepted. The cost to David would be high, but his dignity would be regained. Arthur and David signed an emergency petition to the prosecutor's office using the ancient letter and David's confession. Vance Maritime was placed under temporary supervision, with Arthur as the lead administrator, ensuring that the $3 billion and the fleet were not affected by the scandal. Richard's memory would be protected from total exposure. David signed papers formalizing his divorce. He gave up his share of the marital assets to ensure Scarlett had no legal claim on the Vance legacy. But I demanded a symbolic cut that would seal his commitment to the truth. I looked at David, who was dejected. "David," I said, "when you came to my house, Scarlett convinced you to replace all my office chairs with lower armchairs, saying it was more comfortable for my age. You allowed it. It was an act of treating me as incapable. That was my home. I still feel the disrespect of that day. That pain of disloyalty needs a price." David nodded, crying openly. He rubbed his neck one last time, the nervous gesture disappearing under the weight of the truth. "You will buy a one-way ticket," I told him, my voice firm. "You will go to the secondary Vance headquarters in Alaska, where you started your career 20 years ago. You will work from the ground up again under supervision for years. You will start from scratch, earning your respect back, and you will arrange for those chairs to be delivered back here, her armchairs." David stood up, finally moving with purpose. He walked up to me and hugged me. It was a hug of re-earned respect, an acknowledgement of the female authority he had tried to stifle. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm going to fix this." David stepped back and looked at the expensive wristwatch Scarlett had given him. The watch that symbolized his new identity as a greedy executive, a gift that tied him to the betrayal. He took it off, placed it on the mahogany table, and with a silent fury, smashed it with his fist. The glass broke. The sound of the breaking glass was the sound of his freedom. "This is the end of the David she created," he said. "The David who discarded his own mother." I did not forgive him with words. I forgave him with an opportunity to start over. "Go, David. Start over. You lost the inheritance of David Vance, but you can rebuild the man's dignity. And when you leave Alaska, if you have honored your father's sacrifice, your granddaughter will still remember you." He left to serve his sentence, but with a purpose. The matriarch's autonomy was back. The home and the legacy were safe. 2 months have passed since Scarlett's fall and David's departure for Alaska. The trauma of the yacht and my son's betrayal were wounds that time, not money, would heal. I could have become a real burden. I could have sunk into that pain, that disloyalty that tore at my soul. But the trauma didn't break me. It awakened my inner strength, a hidden power I had forgotten I possessed. I decided that my autonomy would not be defined only by getting my house back. It would be defined by what I did with it. The renewal of hope was not a gift. It was a decision. I refused to be the victim of the story. I chose to be the architect of my own catharsis. I started new projects that proved that age is not an impediment. The first thing I did was at Vance Maritime. I promoted Miguel Torres. The man who saved me, whom they disrespected and tried to discard, became the new head of security and logistics for the entire fleet. He wasn't a white-collar executive. He was a man of dignity. It was my first act of professional reconquest, proving that dignity and loyalty are worth more than titles. I filled the company with people who valued respect and not calculus. But the most profound change happened here, within these walls. The home they tried to turn into a matter of dispute, the full house that became too quiet. I refused to live in a mausoleum of memories. I remembered other women, widows like me, mothers I knew whose adult children now treated them with that same subtle exclusion, that caring that isolates. Women who also felt the pain of not being respected. It was my original support network. My loneliness was not unique. It was a silent epidemic. I started inviting them. The first to come was Margaret, whom David had forced to sell her house. The second, Aisha, who was terrified of her son-in-law's lawyers. I didn't invite them to a grief party. I invited them to a council of war. I organized a tea. Just 6 women in my living room, the same room Scarlett had stripped of my photos. I told them my story. Not the yacht part, but the part about the ritual of lost autonomy. The part about being treated like a child. And the flood of confessions began. Margaret confessed that her son-in-law had taken over her finances. Aisha cried, admitting that her children were trying to force her to sell her 50-year-old home. My voice, which I felt no longer mattered, became their validation. You are not ungrateful or weak for feeling pain. You were wronged. That day, in my living room, we formed the Real Support Network, my personal support group. We meet every Thursday. We bring our legal documents, share lawyer advice, and strengthen each other. My home, which Scarlett saw as a cash prize, became a center of silent empowerment. The smell of fresh coffee and the voices of these women, their laughter, their shared anger, are my new strength. The Real Support Network fights loneliness. The goal is not despair. The goal is action. I started writing my memoirs. Not a book of complaints, but a manual of female authority. I wrote about the wisdom of experience that allowed me to hide the ancient letter. I wrote about the renewal of hope. My new beginning in my 60s was not about finding new love or traveling the world. It was about reclaiming my voice. It was about transforming the pain of disloyalty into purpose. I was no longer just a widow. I was a survivor. And thanks to my new support network, I was an ally. And my true legacy was just beginning to be built. I had recovered my life. My brain adapted. It found new paths to happiness, not despite the trauma, but because of it. In the weeks that followed the confrontation in the room, legal justice moved with relentless speed. The trial was the social event of the year in Miami, but I did not attend a single day. My testimony was given by video, from my office. I was not going to give Scarlett the satisfaction of seeing me in the same courthouse as her. Arthur Sterling and the prosecution presented the case. It was overwhelming. The port camera video that Miguel recovered. Miguel's cell phone recording. Miguel's testimony, calm and unwavering. And of course, the ancient letter, the secret in the basement, which proved the clear intent of fraud and the nullification of the legacy. Their defense collapsed. Scarlett tried to blame David. David, in a pathetic attempt to save his own skin, testified against her. Their marriage, based on greed, fell apart under the pressure of loss, right there, in front of the jury. The cost of disloyalty was public and humiliating. The verdict was swift. Scarlett Davies was found guilty of first-degree attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. 15 years, no parole. Her face, when the sentence was read, showed no remorse. It showed only the empty shock of someone who had lost social status forever. And David, my son, the pain of the disloyalty of the one I raised, he was found guilty of conspiracy and complicity. 7 years. The judge called him a weak man, a disgrace to his father's legacy. That was legal justice. But it was not the real punishment. The true punishment, the karmic justice of the void, happened outside the courtroom. This is the end of the line for the antagonists. Scarlett went to prison, but her true prison is irrelevance. The easy money vanished. The name, Vance, which she coveted so much, was legally stripped from her. She was discarded, exactly as she tried to do to me. The social effect was the final blow. Scarlett's friends pretended they never knew her. The moral cost of disloyalty was social erasure. As for David, his void is different. He lost the respect of his name. He lost his home. He was formally disinherited in my new will, not for revenge, but for proportional justice. When he gets out, there will be no company to run. There will only be the silence that his betrayal bought. I did not celebrate their sentences. I did not toast their downfall. I focused on autonomy and the future. They tried to steal my legacy, but all they managed to do was destroy theirs. The void was the price of their disloyalty, and it was a price they would pay every day for the rest of their lives. 6 months have passed since justice was served. My house in Miami, the mansion that Scarlett tried to sell, has never been so full of life. The home rebuilt. The voices of my real support network now echo through the halls every Thursday. The home is no longer a museum of memories. It has become a center of support, a beacon of hope for women who, like me, refuse to be discarded. But the most important change in my life is 16 years old. Sophia, my granddaughter. I applied the theory of compensation. All the love, all the sacrifice that David rejected, I now invest in her. I am ensuring that she grows up knowing her worth, knowing what unconditional respect is. I took her to the basement. I showed her the dusty mahogany box, the secret that saved our legacy. This, Sophia, I told her, it's not about the $3 billion, it's about dignity. It's about ensuring that what we built with love is not destroyed by greed. The legacy of love is safe. I am no longer the lonely widow they tried to erase. I am the matriarch who reclaimed her future. And if you, who are listening to me, have ever felt discarded by your own family, if you have ever felt that your voice does not matter, remember my story. Remember that even after losing almost everything, it is still possible to start over and rise again. Your inner strength is your hidden power. Subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, and share this story with another woman who needs to remember that our legacy is not what we suffer, but what we achieve by standing up.